Welcome to Aspects and Configurations, Episode 3. The Big Patterns, Grand Trines, T-squares, Yods, and Stelliums explained without doom or hype. A Grand Trine is an ease loop, talent and coherence across an element that can sing or sleep. We'll talk activation rituals that keep it from becoming a hammock. A T-square is productive tension. Two planets in opposition, both pressing an apex planet to act. We'll find the release point in the empty leg and turn stress into aim. A Yod, the so-called finger of God, is a precision tool. Two planets in sextile, both quincunx and apex that demands calibration and craft. We'll translate that into choices you can make on Tuesday. A Stellium concentrates power. Three or more, many use 4 planets in one sign or house that tilt the chart's gravity. We'll cover focus, blind spots, and how to diversify without losing the gift. With live examples and simple maintenance plans, you'll leave knowing how to support each pattern so it works for you instead of running the show. Let's start with the one that gets called easy so often that people underestimate it, the Grand Trine. 3 planets, roughly 120 degrees apart, form a triangle in the same element, fire, earth, air, or water, so the energy circulates with almost no friction. The experience from the inside is fluency. You just know how to do that element. Fire Grand Trine folks have a native sense of initiative and morale. They can start things in warm rooms without checking a manual. Earth Grand Trine folks get reality. They can materialize ideas, stabilize systems, and make quality feel inevitable. Air Grand Trine folks think in networks. They carry context, language, and social breeze. Water Grand Trine folks read the room. They metabolize feeling, hold memory, and restore tone. The danger of a Grand Trine is not failure, it's drift. Trines don't push. If life doesn't hand you stakes, years pass inside a beautiful loop that never touches the ground. The fix is aim and ballast. Give the triangle a job outside its comfort zone and a delivery date. If you've got an Air Grand Trine, host the conversation and ship the summary to the people who weren't in the room. If you've got a Water Grand Trine, translate empathy into a care system with hours, handoffs, and a budget. So you're not rescuing until empty. If you've got an Earth Grand Trine, pick one ambitious build that matters beyond your lawn and agree to public milestones. If you've got a Fire Grand Trine, mentor others. Turn spark into torches you pass, not just bonfires that impress. Scope matters. A Grand Trine that lives entirely in Caden houses feels like a private inheritance. You think, you learn, you heal, you retreat, and it's gorgeous, but the world doesn't necessarily see it unless you create a stage. The same triangle on angles turns into weather. Other people feel when you walk in. Orbs matter too. A tight triad hums. A loose, wobbly, almost triangle behaves more like 3 friendly trines than a closed loop. And if one of the triangle's points is a benefic in good condition, Jupiter or Venus dignified, your triangle is easy to feed. If one is Saturn or Mars in a rough spot, the loop still flows, but with a grit that can become your signature. Elegance with backbone, kindness with standards, speed with aim. Now the T-square, the shape most people think they dread, and most pros quietly value. A T-square is an opposition with both ends squared to a third planet that becomes the apex, the pressure valve. The place, the pattern wants to act out until you learn to steer it from the inside. A T-square feels like this again, a repeating tension you meet in new costumes. The gift is focus. If a Grand Trine drifts without a mission, a T-square has a mission, whether you asked for one or not. People with T-squares accomplish things because the system will not let them forget the point. The trick is choosing the point consciously so the pattern doesn't use conflict as fuel. Start by naming the axis in plain language. 4th, 10th opposition, private life versus public calling. 1st, 7th, me versus we. 2nd, 8th, mine versus ours. 3rd, 9th, local facts versus big frameworks. 5th, 11th, my creative risk versus communal needs. 6th, 12th, Daily grind versus surrender and rest. Then identify the apex house and planet and write a job description for it so it stops freelancing. If Mars is apex in the second, the pressure releases through decisive earning and boundaries around resources. Set scopes in writing, price cleanly, and use action to resolve, not to escalate. If Saturn is apex in the 10th, reputation is your release. Build cadence and proof. Let the standard carry heat. If the moon is apex in the 4th, regulation at home is the lever. Tidy your evenings, set a bedtime. Make sanctuary on purpose so you stop fighting in public because your nervous system never resets. The empty leg, the place opposite the apex, maps where relief lives when you mature. Early on, people try to solve T-squares by hammering the apex harder. More Mars, more Saturn, more Moon. The pattern calms faster when you build the empty leg's virtues. If the apex sits in the 1st and the empty leg is the 7th, design partnership skills, decisions versus discussions, repair rituals, shared calendars. If the apex sits in the 6th and the empty leg is the 12th, schedule real rest. Surrender is not laziness here. It's maintenance. If the apex sits in the 9th and the empty leg is the 3rd, publish little and often. Bring the sky down to street level so your beliefs have neighbors. Sometimes a transit drops a planet onto that empty leg, and for a year, the whole shape feels easier. You can simulate that by putting a human being, a habit, or a tool at that leg, a mentor in the 10th for a 6th house apex, a couples therapist, or a written set of agreements for a 1st house apex, a meditation timer and a locked nightly ritual for a 12th empty leg. Mature T-square lives like a precision engine. Pressure in, work out. Immature. T-square lives like a pressure cooker without a valve. Same parts, different kitchen rules. The Yod, the famous finger of God, sounds dramatic and sometimes is, but let's make it calm and useful. 2 planets 60 degrees apart, both quincunx a 3rd at the apex. The 3 signs usually share neither element nor modality. They don't get each other easily. From the inside, a Yod feels like holding 2 tools that don't belong to the same kit and being asked to fix an unfamiliar machine. It's a call to apprenticeship in a weird niche. Yods do not like off-the-shelf answers. They want a custom hinge you invent by failing kindly until the click appears. The apex house shows where the click matters most. If the apex is the 10th, your public life asks for a one-off way of contributing. Your career path won't look like the brochure. If it's the 5th, creative work becomes the vessel for an odd synthesis. If it's the 7th, partnerships will require bespoke agreements that make 0 sense to your friends and save your life. Timing matters more here than with other shapes because the apex can feel asleep until a transit perfects the quincunxes. People with Yods often report long stretches of, why doesn't this fit? And then a season when the doors recognize them. Your job before the doors is practice and documentation. Write down what nearly worked. Collect prototypes. Catalog failure without shame so you can teach yourself later and watch the base planets, the sextile, because that's your friendly bench. And when the apex is sore, go sit with the 2 that understand each other. Do what they do easily, then return to the odd job after your nervous system remembers success. A word on quincunx feelings because they create the Yod's mood. A quincunx often feels like a shirt that doesn't quite fit. No crisis, just chafe, you adjust. You get better at tailoring. In a Yod, you're tailoring 2 mismatched fabrics to fit 1 person. It's normal to need extra pins. The mature move is curiosity instead of contempt for the awkwardness. The immature move is forcing one fabric to pretend it's the other, then resenting the costume. Now the Stellium, which gets confused with I'm special, but is really this room is crowded. A stellium is 3 or more planets in the same sign or house. From the inside, it feels like living in a city built around one industry. Everything returns to that room. If your stellium lives in the 6th, daily work, craft, health, and service are the plot, even when you think you're writing a romance. If it's in the 11th, communities and networks are where fate keeps knocking. If it's in the 2nd, value, earning, and self-worth are the garden you'll tend for decades. The gift is depth. You can become world class in that room because the hours accrue whether you notice or not. The trap is monoculture. Your chart learns one set of weather patterns too well and forgets the other climates exist. The fix is twofold: diversify inputs and create doorways. If your stellium is in the 4th, travel on purpose, meet people outside your family script, and practice public voice even if your career is not your obsession. If your stellium is in the 10th, build a private practice that cannot be bought by applause or burned by schedules. If it's in the 12th, make structure for service so you don't dissolve. If it's in the 5th, schedule rest so joy doesn't become performance anxiety. Stelliums love boundaries and calendars. Give the room a rhythm, or it will colonize your whole house. Combinations tell deeper stories. A Grand Trine feeding a T-square can turn ease into fuel for growth. The triangle becomes your battery, so the square trains without burning out. A yod pointing at a stellium can feel like destiny narrowing to a needle. Your crowded room gets a singular task that forces you to integrate unlikely skills. When you accept apprenticeship, the stellium's talent stops spiraling and starts serving. A T-square plus stellium without an outlet can produce burnout unless you populate the empty leg with allies and habits. Think like an engineer. Where does the energy enter? Where does it get stuck? Where does it leave? What maintenance keeps the machine honest? Let's make this tactile with portraits that sound like real lives. Aisha has an air Grand Trine between Mercury in Libra, Saturn in Aquarius, and Jupiter in Gemini. Conversation and structure are natural. She can build classrooms in thin air. For years, she drifted between projects, everyone loving her ideas while nothing shipped. The turn came when she anchored the triangle to an earth peg. Every Monday, she published a short essay. Every Wednesday, she taught a 1-hour live session. Every Friday, she posted a case study. The triangle stopped being a hammocked breeze and became a conveyor belt for useful thought. Her luck was really flow put to work. Diego carries a cardinal T-square, moon, in Capricorn, opposite Mars and Cancer, both square the sun in Aries apex in the 10th. His early life felt like whiplash, family needs, personal drive, public demand. He solved it like a young Aries. More force. It worked until it didn't. The adult move was designing the empty leg in Libra, shared decision rules with his team, a weekly meeting that begins with appreciations and ends with clear owners, a couple's check-in with his partner that separates logistics from intimacy. He didn't lose fire. He learned choreography. The T-square still brings heat, but now it cooks dinner instead of burning the kitchen. Mina has a yod, apex Venus, in the 7th, with Neptune in the 12th, sextile Pluto in the 5th as the base. Relationships always felt improbable, too mystical, too intense, too something she tried standard advice and felt worse. The click arrived when she accepted that her bond wanted a spiritual practice, honest erotic depth, and privacy structures that outsiders might mock. They wrote a relationship charter, kept a weekly soul hour, and designed repair rituals that included art and silence alongside words. Neptune and Pluto finally had a job. Venus could stop performing normal people, call her lucky. She calls it finally speaking her chart's dialect. Ravi has a 6th house stellium in Virgo with Mercury, Venus, and Saturn. He is extraordinarily competent and chronically invisible. He kept thinking a grand gesture would fix it. It didn't. The fix was a 10th house doorway, a public lab notes thread where he documents improvements, names collaborators, and posts receipts. His reputation grew not from bragging, but from letting people see what the 6th does best. The stellium never needed confetti. It needed a window. Practicalities next, because shapes improve when you give them simple rules. For Grand Trines, pick a quarterly mission and one constraint that stretches the element fire, agrees to collaborate. Earth agrees to publish. Air agrees to finish. Water agrees to pitch. Schedule the reps. For T-squares, write the axis in a sentence, write the apex job in 5 words, and put one habit at the empty leg you will keep even when angry. For Yods, keep a notebook labeled almost and write down what nearly works. Give the apex regular, low-stakes practice. When a transit lights it, scale gently instead of trying to prove a decade in a weekend. For Stelliums, conduct an audit twice a year. Which subtopics in this room need light? Which rooms in the house need visits? What boundary keeps this room from colonizing the rest? Transits through configurations change volume and pedagogy. Jupiter hitting a Grand Trine can feel like wind in your sails. Say yes in 1 lane, not 5. Pick a vessel big enough to hold the luck. Saturn crossing a T-square's apex feels like a sober coach. You build technique and standards that outlast the season. Prune. Don't panic. Uranus lighting a stellium may try to pry open windows you nailed shut. Offer updates on purpose so you don't need revolution. Neptune wafting through a yod brings holy confusion and the chance to make art out of awkwardness. Double clarity in money and time while letting wonder revise your approach. Pluto touching any configuration brings our renovation and something that's dead so power can return clean. Get help if needed. Be honest, sooner than you think is polite. Orbs and applying Weichai separating still matter at the configuration level. A Grand Trine whose links are exact hums at a pitch you can't miss. If one side is wide and separating, the triangle acts more like 2 fluent channels and one story you already graduated from. You can trust it, but don't expect it to carry weight without intentional re-engagement. A T-square with an applying apex is a live curriculum. With a separating apex, it's a craft you can mentor others in. A yod with an applying apex can feel like pressure to answer a question you can't even phrase yet. The answer is reps, not a life overhaul. When you feel the quain conks ache, choose curiosity and an early bedtime. A stellium that includes the chart ruler or a luminary gets priority over a stellium of minor players tucked away in cadent rooms. Weight accordingly. If you feel overwhelmed by a shape, shrink the scale until your body can comply. A T-square doesn't ask for a new career. It asks for one non-negotiable that prevents the same fight. A Grand Trine doesn't ask you to become a brand. It asks for one public lane where your fluency serves someone else on a schedule. A yod doesn't ask you to explain your life. It asks you to keep the lab notebook and refuse shame while you refine. A stellium doesn't ask you to be everything in that sign. It asks you to choose a canon, learn it, and then add 1 page. That's yours. If you're a parent, coach, or leader reading for someone else, remember that shapes are sensitive. Praise the gift and coach the trap without pathologizing the person. Tell a Grand Trine teenager, you're talented. Talent is not a plan. Let's pick a place for this to land. Tell a T-square colleague, you're allowed to design the valve. What support unlocks the best version of this pressure? Tell a yod friend, you're not wrong for needing odd solutions. I trust you to find the hinge. Tell a stellium partner, I see the room you live in. Let's agree on doorways so love can visit all of you. Before we close, walk your chart's shape in your mind. If you know you carry a Grand Trine, ask it to choose 1 mission for the next 12 weeks and 1 constraint that keeps it honest. If you carry a T-square, name the axis in 1 sentence and write a 5-word job description for the apex. Then put something kind at the empty leg by Sunday night. If you carry a yod, set a weekly 30-minute slot where the apex gets to try and fail without consequence and write down what you learned. If you carry a stellium, schedule a door, a post, a talk, a standing date, a quiet ritual. Whatever lets the rest of your house meet this room without drowning in it. That's the pattern, primer, no superstition, just leverage. If this helped your chart feel less like a riddle and more like a toolkit, come play at mysticbolt.com, pull a spread in Tarot Studio, and ask a configuration-sized question like, what keeps my T-square's apex honest this week? Or, where should I aim my Grand Trine so it serves others? Use the Rider-Waite Tarot app for a quick theme before you enter a day when your stellium tends to take over, so you remember the doorway you promised. take a free tarot reading to set a monthly focus that supports your Yods apprenticeship without rushing it. When your mind starts spiraling the geometry, tune your attention with chakra frequencies for 10 minutes and then do one small act that serves the shape you chose. At night, wind down with the pranayama flow breath timer so your nervous system can release the day's pattern and reset for tomorrow's practice. In the comments, if you want accountability, tell me your shape, the single sentence you wrote for it, and the one behavior you'll test this week. Shapes aren't fate, they're choreography. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep the beat long enough for the dance to become yours.